Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to show how to create curly type of hair like this. So this is technically a tutorial, but it is a little bit long and rambling, so I'm sorry about that. But if you just want to see how I did this without watching the entire video, you can still download the example blend file of this character, which is linked in the description of this video. There's also a Blender 2.8 Eevee version of this, if you want the character in real time. It is pretty cool. I recommend you check it out. And yeah, so this video doesn't really focus on anything other than the hair, so I'm not going to show how to create the skin or the eyes or anything like that, just the hair in this video. I'm gonna start off by creating a sculpt mesh for this guy. So I'm gonna add in a plane. So the sculpt mesh is just sort of an extra mesh that's going to be invisible, but it's going to be used to grow the hair off of. I like doing it this way. I don't like growing hair directly from the character's head. And I'll speed it up so you don't have to watch the entire process. Alright, so that's the sculpt mesh, very roughly done. I'll just add a subdivision surface onto that. Maybe a shrink wrap modifier so that it sticks nicely to the surface. And I'll put the offset to minus 0.01, so it's slightly below the surface. Actually, you know what, I can go minus 0.005, just slightly below the surface. I'll add another subdivision here, and that should be fine. Alright, let's apply everything. So now I've got my sculpt mesh, and I'm going to select the sculpt mesh and new, and add a new particle system here. Hair, and the hair is way too long, so I just enabled the advanced checkbox here as well. So I'll make the hair less. I'll put it about 500, and also make the hair length less. Do something a little bit more manageable. That looks pretty crazy. By the way, if you're wondering why I'm not doing this in Blender 2.8, that's just because the feature set for the hair in Blender 2.8 is not stable yet, so it crashes a lot, and some of the tools aren't there yet, so that's why. But it's okay, we can import this into Blender 2.8 once it's done. So right, we got the right length, and before we start doing the curly stuff, the curly hair effects, I guess first I have to comb it a little bit. So I'm going to use my comb brush here and just, so this character doesn't have long hair, so it's actually a lot easier to handle this type of hair. I'm just going to comb it in like a general direction, and don't try to put any curls into the hair at this point. You're just gonna make yourself miserable. It's a lot easier to do that later. So we just want the general direction of the hair to be right. And yeah, let me spend a little bit of time just combing the general direction. I'll use a length brush to control the lengths a little bit. And I'll just use the add brush with the interpolate setting switched on to add in a few more hairs wherever they're missing. So I'll set the count down to 2 or 3 should be good. Let's use that to fill in some gaps if there are any. Right, so now we have a sort of a very rough type of hair system here, and this is definitely not done. I'll be coming back and still grooming it and combing it and do all kinds of adjustments still. But at this point, I just want to start working on the actual curly effect, because once you get that in nice and early, you can see which direction you need to go and where you still need to adjust and so on. So I'm going to come into my hair settings panel here, and I'll just, for a start, I will just increase the steps here at in the display section. So something like 5. It'll be going higher definitely later on. And then B-spline, I'll enable that and set that to 5 as well. Also, that'll be going higher. And now in the children section here, I'll add interpolated children. I think it should be a little bit better than simple. But yeah, so now we've got this, and I'll just, for a start, I'll come down to the kink settings and just set it to curl, obviously, because that's what we want. We want curly hair. So that looks crazy and not what we want at all. So frequency should be a lot higher for starters. So I'll put it to something like 7, maybe. That's a good starting number. It's crazy, but don't worry. I'll put this to 0.02, the amplitude. And already you can see we've got some curly hair here. So at this point, I guess it's not random enough. So you've got these weird effects here, and at this point, I should probably decide what size I want the curls to be. So I guess I'll put the amplitude a little bit higher. So I've got slightly bigger curls, and then the frequency a little bit lower. About 5, maybe even lower. 4. Alright, the shape here, you can play around with this, but what the shape does, as I've mentioned in previous tutorials, it restricts the curling effect to the tip of the hair. So if you set this higher, the roots of the hairs start straightening out a little bit. And generally it's quite useful, because you don't always want the curl to start exactly at the root of the hair. So this is quite useful sometimes. I'll just put something like 0.5 thereabouts. Should be good for a start. Alright, so the hair isn't random enough. It's really quite uniform and everything. So let me try and do something about that. Maybe the clump also. And right, so random here. We'll set the randomness to, oh, I don't know, set 0.2, sorry. Yeah, 0.1 should be better. Yeah, and then the threshold is sort of it's a mask that if you've got it to 100%, or like the 1 here, then none of the hairs are affected by the randomness, and the lower you have it, the more hairs are affected. So I mean, something like that should work fine. Now I'm not sure if I want the curl effect to be like across everything and the mustache and everything. So there's a couple of ways you can deal with that. Firstly, you can do 2 separate particle systems, but that's too much work. So I'm just going to use another method, and I'm going to use vertex groups. And here in the kink section here, you want to add in a vertex group to sort of control the amount of curl there is. So first thing you need is a vertex group. So I'll come over here to this panel and just add in a vertex group. And I'll call it curl mask. And vertex paint mode, sorry, not vertex paint mode. In white paint mode, I will just start painting the sculpt mesh. Hang on. So, right, let's set the strength down a little bit lower. And I'm not sure, I should probably mirror it, yeah. Although mirror doesn't seem to be working. Oh, hang on. Alright, mirror probably isn't going to work. X mirror. Yeah, mirror isn't working very well, but no worries, I'll just sort of wing it. And right, so I've got a very light white painted in here, and I'll use a blur here, and I'll just blur it in a little bit. It's slightly random, but that's okay. I'm going to set the white back to the draw brush and set the white down to 0, strength very low. So I'll just, because I wanted to sort of fade out a little bit. Let's see how that looks. Alright, so it's doing the opposite of what I want. I actually want the curl to be other areas, so I'll just click this little button here to invert it. And it's still quite curly, so I can increase the strength a little bit. I'll go back to white paint mode and just paint a little bit more strength here. Actually, you know what? Let me disable the X mirror because it's really not working. Alright, so it's up to you how much you want curl in which areas and so on. I just don't want the mustache to curl too much. Yeah, just because that might look weird. It's actually the same for the beard area here. Just a little bit less curl. I just want the hair to be like really curly. So it's a very like messy type of hair, I guess. The hair isn't random enough yet, but it's kind of hard to get rid of that. I'll see what I can do. Like, you could add more uniform roughness, make the size smaller, 0.1. It's a bit too much. 0.01. I'll just leave it like that. You don't want too much roughness. You want a very delicate balance between like curly and just completely random. So I don't know. Keep playing around with it. I want to increase the clumping here. Also want larger curls. So choose 0.08. Let's try that. Okay, cool. I guess I'll work with this for now. I just want to keep combing a little bit because obviously this hair needs a little bit more structure to it. So I'll just alright, let's see what that looks like. That looks surprisingly not too bad. I kind of like it. We should probably check out what it renders like, so I'll just add a very basic material here, make it darker, sort of brownish color. Let's do a quick test render. I've got a lighting set up here. Let's see what this looks like. Alright, the hairs are way too thick, so just scroll to the bottom here. Cycles hair settings. I'll set the root to about 0.2, I guess, and the tip to 0.1. Alright, so there aren't enough hairs, but that's because this is a preview render. So, I mean, it's only rendering 10 children hairs, so 100 is probably too much actually. I'll set it to 50 and see what it looks like. Let's do a full render. Alright, so that's looking kind of weird, but maybe a little bit less randomness would actually be a good thing. I want more hair towards the front here, sort of like he's balding towards the sides. maybe less randomness here as well. Definitely less randomness here. So let's see if I can do anything about that. First of all, let me sort of comb this hair to be a little bit more forward here. And then these hairs a little bit more back. I can even grab the sculpt mesh here and just enable proportional editing and flip back a little bit. Alright, okay, so I think it's too random. I went too far with the randomness, so I guess I'll increase the threshold here. I wonder if long hair, yeah, it doesn't really make a difference. Right, so maybe the curls should be even larger, I guess. Oops, I'm cheating. Actually, that looks pretty legit. But since we're doing curly hair, I can't use that. Cool. And let me do a little bit more combing here. Sort of bring out a few stray hair guides here, just to give it a little bit more character. So from this point on, it's just a case of tweaking everything. I've got my main hair set up, I've got my particle settings, and yeah, I just got to tweak everything. So let's increase the number of preview strands. Looking pretty good. Just work on the silhouette of the hairs. So you don't want everything to be too uniform, especially with a silhouette. Like if you look from a distance, you want to have sort of a distinctive shape to everything. I think also, like I did with the front here with the moustache, I want less curl towards the back here because this looks pretty weird, right? So I'm just going to go back into weight paint mode, and let me just make less hairs here and make sure I'm on the right group curl mask, and just just a little bit less curl towards the back here, not too little. Oh, the red areas are probably too much. This is a nice way of controlling like how much curl or how much of a certain effect you have on the hair. So I've got a blur here. I can blur it in a bit. All right, and particle here. I still want to keep styling this a little bit. Maybe make these a bit longer. Still want to work on these curls here. Alright, let's try and render this, but before I do that, let me just build a proper hair material. So first things first, let me open a node editor, go to material nodes, and then just select this node, Shift S, and just set the shader to hair. Where's the hair shader? There it is. Okay, cool. I'm going to add another one, and I'm going to add a shader. Add shader. Okay, let's do like so. I'm going to set this one to transmission, this one to reflection. Reflection should be pretty much white and not too bright. Transmission can be a reddish color, but also not too bright. And then also add another shader here and set it to diffuse, I guess, just to have sort of a base color underneath that brownish. So alright, so I wanted sort of a gradient on the hairs, so I'm going to add a converter, color ramp. I'll just plug this in here, and in input hair info, I'll just plug the intercept of the hair info into the ramp. I'll just set my colors, so we'll go from a dark brown color to light brown color. Pretty simple stuff. Let's add in more hairs here to see what this looks like. Looks okay. Let me see if I'm missing anything. The hairs are still too thick, so I'll make them thinner. Put this to about 0.1, and this is 0.05. The hair shape is sort of how sharp each hair is. So if you make it, I believe if you make it positive, each hair becomes more like a tube, and if you make it less, then each hair becomes more like a spike, I think. Let's try this and see what it looks like. Right, so I like the color. It's okay-ish for such a simple shader. It does look fine. The hairs, the curls still are, they're looking quite artificial actually. So I'll have to do something about that. I think maybe the clumping is just too high. Shouldn't have such high clumping. I do like this area. This looks pretty good. Okay. The highlights on the hair, they aren't high enough, so they should be higher. I just think less clumping and perhaps yeah, a little bit more hair, a little bit more density here perhaps. And yeah, not too uniform, so it shouldn't be too uniform. This is looking good so far. It's fine. I'll make the reflection a little bit brighter, so, and work a little bit more on the hair settings. So the clumping is too much, and maybe a little bit more. I need to take a look at that render again. Maybe put it on a separate screen here. Okay, so just a little bit more density as well. So I guess I'll add some more hairs. I'll add hair here, make sure interpolate switched on, set it to about 5. Disable the lights here. Alright, we'll see if that works. A little bit less curling here on the sideburns here. So I'll go back to my white paint mode and just a little bit less curling here. Be nice. Okay, cool. We can also set sort of a clumping mask. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to add a new mask, and I'm going to call it a new vertex group, and I'm going to call it clump mask, max, not max, mask, like so. And then I'm gonna set this to clump mask and invert it, right. And okay, now in white paint mode, I can set the areas where I wanted to have less clumping, which is probably around here. I want a little bit less clumping. Oops, wrong mask here. Oh, actually, that looks pretty dumb. Less clumping here and here. Yeah, it's kind of trial and error. Not really sure. Not really sure what looks good. I'm sort of just experimenting a little bit. Yeah, I think less clumping towards the back is actually a good idea. So try that. If it looked this good in the render, it would probably look amazing. But as always, the render is not the same as the viewport display. Unless you're working in Eevee, I guess. But we'll be switching to Eevee later. So don't have to worry about that. So back in particle edit, just want to do a little bit more styling here. And I'm kind of looking at the other render on my other screen over here, just to see where I can improve the actual styling of the hair. So yeah, I just gotta go back and keep working on things that that bother you after each test render. I tend to just go back and sort of fix a bunch of things and keep working like that until I've got most of the issues sorted out. So just adding in a few more hairs here. It's got too much curl here on this sideburn as well as this side, so I'll just go into white paint. You can also make use of some of these other masks. But at this point, I think I'll just stick to these two masks. Okay, a little bit more combing, and then I'll do another test render. So I'm just going to select these areas here by using C on the keyboard. It'll give me sort of a brush select. and then I'll just press H and then Alt H to make sure all the hairs are selected, all the strands are selected. And this sort of acts as a mask. I just want to increase the length of the hairs here, sort of give them a little bit more character. If you look from the front, I sort of wanted to stand out, almost stand out a little bit behind the ears. Let's try that, see how it renders. Okay, so I think this is looking pretty good so far. I like this. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know, some kind of very curly Irishman type of hair. I don't know. Do Irishmen look like this? Probably not. Maybe a little bit of Tolkien dwarf hair in there, I guess. But yeah, this has got a lot of character for me. It's not perfect. It's yeah, it's still, you can still see it's computer generated, especially on the side here, towards the side of the sideburn here. It's too uniform. So I guess with a little bit more tweaking, I can get that to look nice. But I think for I don't know, what is it, 30, 45 minutes of tweaking and playing around, this isn't bad at all. I can definitely work with this. So I'm gonna stop this tutorial here for the day. Maybe I'll make a follow-up with kind of a few more tips and tricks to kind of get this to the next level. I'm pretty happy with this. I will do a quick Eevee test render. So yeah, let's see how that looks. Alright, so this is the Eevee file. It doesn't look quite as good as the Cycles one, obviously, but it does come pretty close, especially actually the skin. I really like how that came out. But even the hair, you know, it does look convincing. It's definitely good enough for pre-visualizing or stuff like that. I'm pretty happy with this. I think this turned out pretty well. I will include this file in the example files for this tutorial. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.